This show is a Hopful Media podcast production.
Hey, History of Persia fans. Before Persia, another civilization controlled the Middle East. The very first civilization, the inventors of writing itself. From the clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia come the oldest stories. The history and myth of the first Mesopotamians is the subject of the Oldest Stories podcast online at oldeststories.net. If you like ancient history, come check out the Oldest Stories after you listen to this episode.
The history of Persia is intertwined with conquest. It began with conquest when Cyrus, king of a small city called Anshan, set out to build the greatest empire the world had ever seen. In a series of stunning campaigns, he achieved just that, becoming one of the greatest conquerors in history, and basically started Persian history. After all, you don't get the title the Great for nothing. But he wouldn't be the last great Persian conqueror. Other Persian rulers like Darius the Great, Mithridates I, and Ardashir I would go on to become great conquerors on their own, establishing their own great empires and legacies. If you want to hear their story, and the stories of other great conquerors, many of whom are far less famous despite their great achievements, join me, Ramzi Shalah, on my podcast, The Conquerors Podcast, available on all platforms you listen through.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to America's Secret Wars, the podcast all about forgotten, overlooked, and deliberately buried times the United States has used military forces to fight or occupy foreign soil. I am your host, Trevor Cully, and today I am joined by two returning guests. Ben Jacobs from Wittenberg to Westphalia.
Hello.
And Roberto Toro from Czar Power and the
Howdy,
history of
y'all.
Georgia.
And Quest for Power.
Because you
No.
don't have enough.
That's it. Three's the
No.
lucky number. It's like the Holy Trinity.
No, Roberto, we told you there was another thing that we were going to be talking about, but actually, your friends are concerned about you, Roberto. And
That is why I invited you on this podcast that you've been asking to come on once every couple of months for the last 5. And that you are already the most frequently appearing guest on.
What can I say? I like hanging out with you, Trevor.
I appreciate it. So, this is the first episode of what I'm calling Season 2, which is really just my way of saying I fell off the bandwagon and didn't set up a recording for this show for almost a year. But today we're going to do things a little differently from the usual Secret Wars formula, because honestly, this episode is 3 podcasters screaming into the void at the state of the goddamn world.
As always.
Unless you have this podcast remotely delivered on physical media to your off-grid compound on Mars, I'm sure everyone listening is aware of why we're doing this.
it's because of the tariffs I can't afford scotch now.
Yeah, I have to get my wine from the state of Georgia, not the country.
Honestly, it's a toss-up between what would be more efficient, fueling my car with gas or tariffed scotch right now. I'm already doing the higher ethanol content gasoline. I don't know what more they want from me. But the short version is that on the morning of February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a massive aerial and missile war against Iran. Nominally, they are conducting this campaign against the Islamic Republic regime that has ruled Iran since 1979, and making all of the usual boasts about doing this for the benefit of the Iranian people living under that oppressive regime and for the world at large. The world at large has, by and large, disagreed with this, especially because they're also being pretty open about it being a war for oil. it's a bit hard to believe that this isn't simply two or three would-be authoritarian regimes striking out at one another for their regional rivals just to have a war for the power that affords their leaders, particularly Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump. And it's extra hard to believe that this is a war for the good of the Iranian people when one of the very first targets of the war was a girls' school in Minab, where almost 200 staff and students were killed in what is very clearly a United States airstrike carried out under severely outdated intelligence.
Okay, quick question, Trevor. How conspiracy theorist could I get?
Go for it. I mean,
Or like, how rude could I be? Because it's like, uh, my thought was like, oh, it's just like President Trump to either to attack little girls.
yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't dispute that one. Like,
Mhm.
I feel like that particular accusation is pretty substantially documented at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
More times than Jesus Christ is quoted in the Bible.
yeah, legally, allegedly, but it's alleged based on thousands of documents. So make of
And his
that
own
what we
words.
will. Yeah,
Yeah.
and decades of quotes. So there's also that. We're living in hell, is what I'm trying to say.
Realistically, from a military history standpoint, the track record of the U.S. military going to wars with people they didn't expect to be going to war with and blowing up old military bases that turn out to have things like the Chinese embassy in them is also pretty strong. So yeah,
You mean the inept government is using outdated information because they made no plans because you have a bozo in chief just saying attack them now?
Yeah,
you know, yes.
And you have Keg's breath in charge of the Department of Defense.
that is Secretary of quote unquote war, Pete Hegseth, for people not up on their memes. Apt
Oh, sorry.
nickname. No, I mean it's fine. There's just so many things here. Um, Officially, I'm not here to tell anybody what you should think about the idea of American intervention against the Islamic Republic in general. That's a far more complicated topic than I really want to get into. It is contentious and hotly debated both within the US and anti regime circles in Iran for a reason. I have certainly been more than clear that I would love to see the Islamic Republic fall
Oh,
Hear, hear.
absolutely.
Yep.
and for a better, more liberatory government to take its place. I've also been pretty clear in the past that I do not think it is the United States' job to force revolution in other countries.
No.
Remarkably bad at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We really are.
historically, we're awful at it. We've done it
Yeah.
like
Like,
4 times in the last 20 years.
yeah, and it's really bad. And just my thought process, because we could just even harken all the way back to freaking Venezuela. The Venezuelans, like the Hispanics in the U.S. were like, "Oh my God, he's gonna have some regime change. He took out Maduro, and the same people are in charge. Like nothing's changed.
That's not
It's just the
true.
face.
Maduro isn't in charge. That changed.
His party is in charge, though.
Yeah, no, the government is fundamentally wholly indifferent from what it was before. Um, I also want to state for the record that we are hearkening all the way back to 4 months ago.
Yeah.
If
Because
anyone can remember the old times.
yeah, back in January of this same year,
Is it only been 4 months?
it has only been 4 months
Oh,
because
God.
every week of this year has lasted a lifetime.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like I'm like the only person in the world who's not completely on the verge of a mental breakdown all the time this year. But that's because my nonverbal autistic daughter has been institutionalized.
And
And
and there we have the
so
bright spot in Ben's year.
It's a positive thing, y'all. Like
she
she's
needs
getting
the
No,
lots of
help.
stuff. She needs the
She's
help.
she's getting the support that she really needs, and we're there every week, and the staff are fantastic, and we couldn't be more thrilled with the program. But like, I've spent the last 10 years getting beat on by by this little kid. I've got scratches all over my arms. I, you know, I don't know what the moral of the story is, except
the moral of the story is that everything is deeply fucked up, and somehow that's the good thing.
yes, yeah,
Oh my god. So like here's the thing. I'm just gonna go off just by saying that I dislike all three of these regimes. So whatever
yes,
I'm saying, it is from a dislike of the Americans, dislike of the Israeli government, and dislike of the Iranian government. And here's the thing. I'm saying I dislike the governments. So,
yeah, yes,
but I don't know. For me, the fact that the American regime is literally coming in, and I'm going to say this, for those who don't know, I'm Cuban. Trump embargoed, not even embargoed, he blockaded Cuba for several months to the point where like everything, like they were not getting fuel, they're not getting anything. And it took like people starting to act out to like convince them saying, "Hey, this is like a really bad look if you keep leaving these people dying." Because like Cuba has like one of the best like medical programs in the world, and because they don't have access to like electricity or anything, they can't do anything. And there's like a bunch of like mosquito-based diseases spreading in the country because of it. And of course, I still have family there, so I'm kind of pissed off about that. So,
mm,
but we're here to talk about Iran. I'm sorry, I'm getting self-topic. I'm just
No,
mad at the world.
no, I mean, I think that's a good point because one, like, the breaking point was somebody saying you're not Netanyahu, so you can only do one genocidal war at a time.
Hmm.
Um, but also like if you were to ask me in December of last year what country I thought the US was most likely to invade this year, Iran would always be in my top 5 because we've been threatening to do it for decades. But like I really thought that Venezuela was going to take a lot longer. And it seemed like immediately after Venezuela, they were going to turn around and go for Cuba. And then all of a sudden, all three of us are at intelligent speech, and I'm spending my day glancing between live news feeds and podcast presentations, checking to see if Ayatollah Khamenei had died,
Hmm.
because this came out of nowhere.
yeah.
It really did, and I don't know what's going on in that head of his. Probably like bing, 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 bong, bing, 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 bong. But
I that we know that is actually something going on in his head on a regular basis.
I know, I know, I know. It reminds me of the videos like there's no thoughts between his head. It's just bing, 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 bong, bong, bing, bing, and it's all about dogs.
Yeah,
But like,
this is literally a thing that he has said in multiple speeches.
yeah. Oh man, I hate the fact that I'm joking and I'm not even lying.
No, satire was taken out back behind a shed in 2016 and killed with an axe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I still subscribe to The Onion, and I see this, and I'm like, is this real? Because it feels a bit
Right.
too real. And then I see The Onion on the bottom, and I'm like, this is The Onion. Okay.
Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, if anybody is familiar with the subreddit r/ate the onion, it's gotten a lot less fun the last couple of years because it's totally reasonable to believe political satire these days.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Never mind AI and all of,
Oh yeah, that's
and
the whole
regular
thing.
old-fashioned disinformation. Just like everything's so ridiculous that the onion seems plausible most of the time.
Yep. Well, now that we've depressed ourselves,
Yeah, woo,
What
I'm
do you mean?
having
I'm
more scotch.
happy. I need to pour myself some more wine, but we
Uh,
can do that while we're doing this.
so I guess I'll get through a little bit of my script, despite the fact that it is a half-edited mess at this point because I wrote it as like a 2-minute statement and then a 10-minute statement, and now I'm sure we're going to be here for more than an hour. Um, we're all history podcasters, and as a breed, we love context. Ben loves context so much that he hasn't started his podcast after 12 years of releasing episodes. Uh, However, this is not the full history of America and Iran episode. That will be a whole fucking mini series someday. If you want a good, relatively compressed explanation of how we got here historically, Tristan Johnson from Step Back History has a great video essay on YouTube you can check out. I'll put a link to that in the comments or in the episode description. But so does basically every other current events history show in the entire world. I'm just going to do the real brief version so we can talk about the current shit.
Sounds good to me.
More importantly, I want to make it clear that this is still true, although in the modern age of instantaneous remote communication warfare, the physical border is less relevant. The modern tension between Iran and Western powers, specifically the US and the UK, is a conflict over oil, and it has been for more than a century. This stretches back to a document/agreement called the Darcy Concession, which gave British corporations control over all Iranian oil in 1901. That was fundamentally at the root of all Western intervention in Iran's 20th century revolutions, the expulsion of Reza Shah and the subsequent occupation of Iran during World War II, the Anglo-American support for the Iranian self-coup in 1953, and eventually the rise of the current Islamic Republic regime in 1979. It all comes back to oil, and it has for 125 years. Look at the ongoing struggle for power in the Persian Gulf or the price sign at your local fuel station, and you can see that this war is not any different from any of those conflicts that came before it.
I mean, I don't know what you're talking about, but the price of oil being this high is just something we gotta do, to help, Almighty Trump do what he has to do to take out the Iranian government.
Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah, Almighty Trump coming, for anybody listening to this later, in the week where he posted an AI picture of himself on discount Twitter depicting himself as Jesus Christ, and then said, no, I'm supposed to be a doctor. It's a red cross that it's a portrait of fucking Jesus.
Mormon Jesus.
He's wearing flowing robes with a red sash.
And that's Mormon Jesus.
Right.
Yeah.
Or a doctor, because when I go to a doctor, very often I find that they are wearing flowing robes and are illuminated from behind by very bright lights.
Yeah. Often holding a glowing orb in their hand and accompanied by what appears to be a 3-horned flying demon coming out of the sun.
Because he's the Antichrist. Come on.
While healing what is either Jeffrey Epstein or Jon Stewart.
I'm gonna go with Jeffrey Epstein on that one.
Yeah,
it's his buddy.
It's such a weird thing, and he's also fighting with the Pope. We're in the weirdest possible timeline.
Yeah, when we decided to start doing this, I was going to be talking about the Avignon papacy.
Yeah.
And then that turned out to not be a thing.
We might still get the Miami papacy, don't worry.
Yeah, sure.
The Mara Lavignon.
Yes.
Who's going to bet it, Marco Rubio or JD Vance?
I think Vance, he's the arch Catholic convert.
Clearly has no idea what any of the doctrines of the church are actually about.
No, he just likes the Crusaders and the Catholic imagery.
Yeah.
Just like most of the current government seems to. Um, since the Islamic Revolution of 1979, and the Iranian hostage crisis, where the hardline revolutionaries took the staff of the U.S. Embassy in Iran hostage following their revolution, the United States and Iran have had an on and off conflict with varying levels of engagement from Israel over the decades. Um, Usually, this has taken the form of shooting at each other from boats or intermittent missile and drone strikes. This is the biggest explosion of that decades long conflict that we've ever seen.
Can I
Um,
blame that devil Reagan for the start of all this?
Um,
no,
not this time.
yeah, this one goes back to Dwight Eisenhower, is really
Damn
how
it,
the US.
Eisenhower.
And even that, I'm all for blaming the CIA and the Dulles brothers for a lot of American intervention in the late 20th century, including Iran, that they were directly behind that. But they did that under a lot of pressure from Winston Churchill's second administration, which is to say, Churchill was threatening to invade Iran after the then Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh tried to nationalize the Iranian oil reserves. And Churchill basically issued an ultimatum to Eisenhower saying, if you don't use American resources to overthrow Mossadegh, then the United Kingdom will be forced to invade Iran. And this was happening simultaneously with a Soviet buildup of troops on the Iranian border. So what Churchill was essentially threatening was to invade Iran and launch the world into a third world war in 1953, shortly after the Soviets had developed nuclear weapons. What nobody knew at the time is that while all of that was going on, Stalin died and the Soviet military was in fucking disarray. So probably nothing would have happened.
Yeah.
But it probably would have been a pretty swift British victory, and then they would have occupied Iran for a couple of years and kept the oil under the British Petroleum Company. Not that that also wouldn't have been a terrible thing, but it would have changed a lot. Um,
Mm-hmm.
the other thing that we can't really say today is that this actually falls under the category of America's secret wars, at least not yet.
No,
Uh,
no.
we are still in the middle of this, and it will probably be the biggest news story of the year unless some truly wild shit happens in the next 8 months, which, to be fair, is not implausible. It's kind of sounding a bit like they might assassinate the Pope. Um, this could spiral into being the least secret war of any country for all time, or
Trump
we
can't
could.
keep secrets. Come on.
There's that. No, he can keep one.
The Epstein files are still out.
Uh, yeah, but whose name is underneath all of those black bars? The world will never know. Um, but the thing is, we could also reel back from the brink, and this could just be another bullet point of forgotten blowups in the Persian Gulf a century from now. Who the fuck knows? That's the thing about modern air and missile wars. It's easy for the public to disengage if they are brief or long enough. We're sort of in this middle range now where people are paying attention, but if we just end up continuously bombing them for the next decade, like we did with Iraq in the 90s, people will tune out from that.
Although, I mean, I feel like having a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz does kind of, sooner or later people will come up with something else, but potentially causing a recession due to the unraveling energy industry
Well, and that is the one bizarre thing about this week in particular, and two, the biggest question of this entire conflict is immediately after the war started and it became clear that this was going to be a region-wide conflict as the US and Israel bombed Iran, and Iran just kind of started spamming the shoot missile button and hitting everybody else in the region because everybody in the region is allied to one degree or another with the US these days. Basically, the only country within arm's reach of Iran that's not a US ally are Afghanistan, which Iran doesn't get along with because one is Shiite extremists and the other is Sunni extremists, and the other is Armenia, which okay. Like,
I mean, it's Armenia.
Armenia is important. Armenia has its own gigantic, horrifying military problems that come up like every 6 months recently, but they're not really involved in this one. The issue is now that the Persian Gulf got closed down when Iran started cutting off access to the Strait of Hormuz and hypothetically has mined the strait. That was a report early on that was never contradicted, so far as I'm aware, but also nobody can find the goddamn mines, and ships have been sailing through it, so it's a bit unclear. But in
So is it one of
response,
those things that so the U.S. government saying we cleared out all the mines as a bit of a
no,
Yeah,
it's
they didn't send any minesweepers. I don't know if we even have any at this point.
there are our minesweepers are ancient and they're really hesitant to send them out because we don't make them anymore. So like they would have to reconfigure a shipyard if any of them didn't find the mine first. Which is a
Mhm.
really dangerous position to put a discontinued class of ship in.
Which just seems par for the course for the U.S. military at this point.
I
Just
know
like this
you
is a tangent, but like we keep building, we keep letting people convince us to build fucking laser battleships, and we don't have enough frigates or destroyers to escort convoys, and we don't have any goddamn minesweepers.
no
and we
we've
spend so much money on building like airplanes that we're never going to see, that are never going to leave production. Like,
yeah, we've lost like $60 billion in aircraft in the last month, but like, we don't have any fucking minesweepers.
I mean, I have my super on my computer, so I don't know what you're talking about.
You
Anyway.
know, there the operating systems that some government computers run on are so concerningly old it might be pre-installed. Um,
Mhm. I did have to install mine, so
So the issue with the Strait of Hormuz is now the United States, after failed negotiations this past weekend, has decided that we are also going to blockade the Strait of Hormuz.
wow.
Um, and this is something that's really easy to make fun of. One,
You
it's
can't
easy
kick
to
me in the
make
nuts. I'm going to staple myself in the nuts.
right. And on one hand, very easy to make fun of the negotiations because Iran sent 4 PhDs and we sent JD Vance and Jared Kushner. Um,
Who? Those
yeah,
idiots?
yeah,
Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Got it.
Yep.
uh-huh. And one, Jared Kushner has for some reason been heading up foreign policy in the Middle East for like most of the last decade now, um, and still doesn't seem to know fuck all about it. But also, they weren't there to negotiate, and neither I get the sense were the Iranians, at least from the statements they have made public. It really seems like both sides went to the negotiating table demanding unconditional surrender from one another and then went home. They were there for less than a day, and then everybody went home from Islamabad, and the United States declared that we would also blockade the strait. And that sounds dumb when Iran is already doing that. But the hypothetical military goal there is actually a real one. The idea is that up to this point, Iran has been able to allow its own ships out and allow ships friendly to them into the straits. Notably, India continued buying Iranian oil despite American threats. So did China. Um, so the idea is that we would cut off Iran from its own allies. The issue is this: we are recording this after the first full day of the hypothetical American blockade, and I am just looking at a news feed here from Live UA Map. It's a good,
Well, I love that map.
yeah, it's a great resource for following major world conflicts at the moment. Um,
Yep.
just collating news from a whole bunch of different sources into a convenient feed with a map marking all the locations where events are happening. So we have earlier today from around noon, U.S. claims that no ships have crossed the blockade. We have from around 3 p.m. today, breaking news: more than 20 commercial strips have transited the Strait of Hormuz in the past 24 hours.
Yep.
So I don't know what our blockade is doing, but it seems like both Iran and the US are kind of tacitly allowing ships from other Gulf states to sail out, or at least from or at least ships flagged from neutral nations to sail out, uh, which is on one hand kind of making a mockery of your declared blockade, but also an insanely practical measure because even if oil isn't flowing out through the Gulf, there is a massive, massive problem with blocking trade through one of the world's most important and narrowest naval arteries. The entire world economy runs on shipping containers. Everybody knows what they look like. They're the big rectangular corrugated steel containers with double doors, and every cargo ship of size in the world just fills up hundreds of those containers and sails them from port to port full of whatever. That can be barrels of oil, compressed natural gas, manufactured goods, raw food materials, anything. It's all shipped in those containers. They're a standardized size used by every shipping company in the world. There is a limited supply of those containers because they take steel and time to manufacture and then ship out to ports and stock up ships with new ones as they, rust out from being out at sea all the time. So when thousands of those shipping containers get stuck inside the Persian Gulf for weeks or months at a time, and the Houthis, who are Iranian rebels in southwestern Yemen, start shooting off missiles to close off the Red Sea and block the Suez Canal, all of the ships full of shipping containers that are outside of the Persian Gulf have to go around the Cape of Good Hope, take the long route around Africa like it's 1490 fucking 2, and the world supply of shipping containers gets held up, which means you can't load up new ships with new goods and new raw materials to ship out to other places and do all of the weird manufacturing where you grow a pear in Argentina and ship it to China to put it in a container full of syrup so you can ship it to the United States to sell in a grocery store. All of that shipping gets held up for every ship that can't make it out of the Straits of Hormuz, out of the Red Sea, or has to take several extra weeks to sail around Africa. I have seen estimates from economists saying that this is going to have a domino effect that will not be recovered from for years, if not decades. And we're only a month into this.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
great. I did not know that much. And that
I,
is,
I hadn't heard the shipping container part. I will say that the you know the knock-on effects, because the oil industry isn't just oil; it's all the things that you make from oil,
mm-hmm.
and that stuff's all getting held up. And from what I've been reading, it's held it's hurting the Asian economies particularly bad. So that plus the shipping container thing, that's what are we doing here?
Yeah, it's I had forgotten about the, you know, oil into oil byproducts. Also propane and
Yes,
propane byproducts, because Iraq in particular is one of the world's largest producers of natural gas, and there are some pipelines to get that out by other means that they can't do for oil, but not nearly in the quantities that you get when the straits are open.
right.
But I
Um,
sell propane and propane accessories.
yeah, gas prices, petrol prices, those are based on world market rates, even though the United States doesn't really buy oil from the Gulf or from the Persian Gulf. We buy it from the Gulf of Mexico. But, this means no new plastics, because all of the plastic product manufacturing countries do buy their oil from the Persian Gulf.
Yeah.
So no
Oh
no new
no, my shitty
plastics.
Timu shit.
Well, your shitty Timu shit, so it's hitting the Asian economies now. Give it 6 months, it hits us, and we're
Yeah.
already being hit by
Hmm.
every decision this administration makes.
Yep. I don't shop at Timu, but like, still, I like getting my vinyls, and that takes oil. So
Yeah.
vinyls are made of oil, right?
Yeah, but they have a shelf life.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wouldn't say that they're in the top 10 of things that are getting produced with petroleum byproducts.
yeah. I mean, like there's a not unlikely chance that the knock-on effects of this include unforeseen consequences, like even further deforestation than what was already planned, because we're going to hit a point where the supply of oil for plastic products is delayed, so we use wood and metal options instead to fill the gap for a brief period of time. Demand goes up, they have to cut down more trees, and we just gutted the National Forestry Service.
I
Like
was about to
this,
mention, like, we just
Right.
gutted that, so that I can see why they did that now.
and
Oh,
last year they passed laws to make it easier to fell trees and clear land in national parks. Like there's all
Joe in
these things
Alaska.
that are stacking up and creating these knock-on effects that aren't intentional. I mean, I certainly can't believe they're intentional, because this doesn't seem like an administration that plans that far ahead, even if they do behave like supervillains.
yeah.
Just like this is a catastrophic knock-on effect that we will not see the end of for long after the war ends, if it does end in a timely manner.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The the question though is that like if everyone is ignoring the blockade, or are they? Like how bad is that going to be? Like there I see so the other side of this is economists say shit all the time and then it gets put into articles and who even knows which economist is right, whatever. But um I've read some economists that are saying that like the damage is done. We're we're SOL already. Um, but if the straits open and this whole thing just turns into a political fart on both sides, uh, that would be good because maybe the economy wouldn't entirely collapse, but also what would that even mean for the region?
Yeah, I mean, that is a great point. Like, I think at this stage, it is a question of how bad the recession is, not whether or not it happens. I think,
Yeah.
that was sealed within about a week of killing Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. We are looking at a very weird situation for the Middle East, West Asia, because one, they definitely went into this looking at the last 6 months of Iranian popular discontent. There were protests all through the end of last year and beginning of this year. One of the weird things about this particular moment is that Iran has been without public internet access for almost all of 2026 so far,
Yeah.
which has made getting information just from the sources I usually use, let alone, just in general, very difficult. Um, the other thing is, they went into that expecting to topple the regime. They thought they were going to fly in, blow up Ayatollah Khamenei's house, and then the people would rise up or something. You the first 2 weeks saw massive U.S. bombardment of Iranian Revolutionary Guard posts in northwestern Iran, right on the Iraqi Kurdish border, where there are lots of Iranian Kurdish militants who cross the border and occasionally collaborate with U.S. support. And there has been some amount of Iranian bombing of Kurdish positions inside their own borders too. There's something going on there that's not being reported on internationally because we're not getting a lot of communication there. And it's not clear if it's just kind of preventative bombing on the regime's part or if there might be more conflict inside Iran than reporting is leading us to believe. But even if this does evolve into a Kurdish revolt of some sort, I don't think that topples the government without, the Persian majority participating in it.
Right.
On top of that, you've got Israel trying to conquer the world, as far as I can tell.
Yeah, I don't know what BB's thinking.
Yeah, just
They have issued an evacuation order for like the southern third of Lebanon, and are certainly acting like they intend for the Israeli Defense Forces to occupy a portion of that territory. There was an article today suggesting that there is U.S. support for the Lebanese prime minister to make a move against Hezbollah and kind of rein in Hezbollah's paramilitary power in the country, which would hypothetically be a good thing for the Lebanese government, but is also basically the U.S. calling for a Lebanese civil war.
yeah. It would have been a good thing for Lebanon to do before Israel started bombing or in the absence of Israel bombing. Uh, yes, it would cause a civil war. That's not good. But um, doing it, I mean, Hezbollah's whole reason to exist in the first place is that they were the group that was like, we need to stop the Israeli occupation of southern Lebanon. So doing it now would be like, uh, I don't even know what that would be like. It would just be incredibly stupid.
Right.
Instead of like these people's whole aim is to get the Israelis out of southern Lebanon, why would we want to stop them now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
now that
it would be, it's the United States basically calling for the Lebanese government to support the Israeli occupation of a large chunk of their country is
yeah,
is what I make of that story. Who the hell knows if that actually happens? If I were the prime minister of Lebanon, I'd be like, "Yes, America, whatever you say, America, could you please get Netanyahu out of my yard?"
yeah,
Like, um, but this is also coming on the heels of Israel watching the Assad regime fall in Syria last year and promptly bombing the fuck out of Syria for no reason whatsoever, aside from the possibility that someone they don't like might maybe one day get control of some of Assad's old military assets. Like, nationwide preemptive strikes across the region, and a minor invasion that I think is still ongoing out of the Golan
It is.
Heights.
yeah.
It
Like,
is, yes, because you can still see it on Live UA map. And like, so they've kind of kept going in. Like they've basically
Yeah,
taken a few of the cities on that border.
I haven't really followed the scale of what exactly is happening there, but like I know they've taken most of Katsarin.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
Um,
that's an interesting thing though, because that part of Syria is very heavily Druze, who tend to be fairly pro-Israel. Just
I
because
mean,
everyone else
I'd
spends
be
all their time
pro
kicking.
whoever the
Yeah,
fuck isn't trying to murder me if I were a Druze person in Syria these days.
that
Like,
is, I mean, that is more or less in general the Jews, the Druze approach to everything. Whoever
yeah,
is not
like
killing me. Yeah.
Because
So,
like, because Turkey stopped invading a while ago, right?
yeah, Turkey stepped off when the Kurds made a deal with the new Syrian government.
Okay.
Um, so,
which the Syrian government proceeded to violate.
well,
Okay.
yeah, we're talking about Middle East civil war politics, Ben. There's no such
Yeah.
thing as an agreement that isn't violated.
Yeah.
I
Very true.
we for example, the US called a ceasefire with Iran last week. Israel said, "Well, you didn't say a ceasefire with Hezbollah, so we're going to keep bombing Lebanon." Iran said, Israel has violated the ceasefire, bombed Israel, and then the US bombed Iran. This happened in the course of like 4.5 hours.
Oh my
So
God.
I don't even know what to do with most of the claims we get about this war in the news at this point.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I, I mean, it's pretty clear. So you can't trust anything the Iranian regime says, but our administration's talking out their ass.
No, I trust the Iranian Lego AI videos more than I trust what I'm getting from the American White House
I
press
do
corps.
too. I do too. And that's the issue. Is like the fact that I can't even trust my own country for half this stuff now, versus like the country we're supposedly at war with, which we're not even at war with them because there's been no act of Congress.
Well, well, yeah, let's go to a flashback from 4 weeks ago and the hilarious attempt to be like it's not a war for a few days,
Yeah.
where all of the American leadership tried to say, oh no, it's not a war for various reasons. The official phrase Trump settled on was an excursion because someone told him to say incursion and he misunderstood. Um, that's not confirmed legally. I should say that that is not a confirmed explanation, but like, what the hell else would it be? Um, the the whole thing is just three giant liars lying about everything
Yeah.
while bombing one another continuously and occasionally destroying large swaths of Abu Dhabi in between rounds. Like,
Yeah.
I've no love for any of the Gulf monarchies, but, they are allies of convenience with the United States. They are, aside from Saudi Arabia, they aren't military forces.
No.
Mm.
Yeah. They're civilization city states. They're just
They're just there and like
they're there because we sent them a trade route.
Yeah, I mean, like for Bahrain, like that is why Bahrain is an independent nation, is because
Yeah.
they are on a trade route for the rest of the world.
mm-hmm.
And
So
that's
otherwise, wouldn't it
why
be
the
subsumed by
island of
Saudi
Bahrain,
Arabia?
what?
So otherwise, wouldn't it be just basically subsumed by Saudi Arabia?
It's a little island off the coast of Saudi Arabia and Qatar, and has bizarrely been a an independent entity for almost as much of its history as it hasn't been. Like for like 5,000 years, the island that is now Bahrain has been an independent trade hub.
Oh, okay.
So more power to them.
Yeah,
Right.
Still
like,
Like,
still doing their thing.
but let me click on the dot on live UA map and see what happened in Bahrain. Oh, they blew up an NSA station.
I mean, that's the one thing I'll say for Iran is that they're at least trying to target U.S. military installations, which,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
possibly a little bit more success than we are.
and US military personnel then runs and hides in civilian hotels. Like the United States is using civilian human shields in this war. That's the only, you know, if if that's what it is when
Yeah,
Hamas has a base near an apartment building in Gaza, that is certainly what we are doing when we tell our Air Force to go hide in a Emirati hotel.
yeah,
I mean, yes.
yeah. Did they not
Valid
build
point.
bomb shelters on our bases? Is that what happened?
No, because we make them. We make our bases out of like sheet metal and like.
Yeah, well, the they are primarily, I'm sure some of them have bomb shelters, but they are not all built in places that would be particularly conducive to bunker building.
I suppose,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Well, and at least one other thing I want to cover in this is speaking of bunkers,
Okay.
uh this whole thing has been about, or at least one of the excuses for it has been Iran is going to get a nuclear weapon.
Right.
Didn't
Ben,
we destroy their capabilities months ago?
well,
Like,
yeah, one, we hit their primary nuclear development facility with a bunker buster missile uh, at the end of last year. Don't remember exactly which month. Doesn't really matter. It was one of the first good quality videos of a missile like that being used. So either we lied and that wasn't the sum total of where their nuclear stockpile was, which wouldn't be surprising, or, and equally likely, it turns out the infamous American bunker buster missile doesn't work. And I
but
have to
can
imagine
it
that
be
that is
both?
part of the equation.
But it can also be both.
Yeah. Um, Ben, I think you're the oldest of the three of us. Uh,
Sure.
how long have you been hearing that Iran is going to get a nuclear weapon?
I mean, honestly, it's been a boogeyman of the Israelis since before, uh, possibly the year I was born. They did that
Yeah.
first raid on the Israeli nuclear weapons facilities, like in the 80s. Uh,
The Israelis have nuclear weapons, Ben?
that's not what I said, but of course they do.
No, you said you
Yeah.
did say Israeli nuclear weapon facilities. Just saying.
The Israeli raid on the anyway on the
Mhm.
Iranian nuclear weapons facilities. Um, yeah, so there was that raid late 80s, early 90s, whatever. That the Israelis then said that they had completely destroyed the Iranian nuclear weapon development program, and then everyone shifted to worrying about Iraq after the Gulf War, um, and then
81.
81. Okay, yeah, so that was several years before I was born. Uh, yeah, so then everyone shifted to worrying about Iraq. Then we invaded them to get rid of their weapons of mass destruction and couldn't find them because
Because we got rid of them, Ben. Come on.
no, they spent a whole bunch of time running around looking for them. They didn't exist.
No, because they spent all
And then
that
they
time looking for Ol.
Yeah.
and then
Well,
they then we somehow switched over to being worried about Iran developing nuclear weapons again. And I mean, the fact of the matter is that it's not confirmed publicly, but everyone knows that Israel has nuclear weapons. Everyone knows that Pakistan has nuclear weapons. They don't even make a secret about it. Pakistan developed their nuclear weapons with money from Saudi Arabia, with a probable it is very likely that part of the deal was that if Saudi Arabia asks for nuclear weapons from Pakistan, they will get them because they paid for them. So, like, everyone in the region has nuclear weapons except Iran.
Yeah.
Uh, Turkey is part of the NATO nuclear umbrella.
Yeah, we
So,
just we just keep our own nukes in Turkey.
yeah. So, I don't love the idea of Iran having nuclear weapons because they are, not the most responsible regime in the world. But on the other hand, like, everyone else does.
Yeah. Well, and so like I think the 1981 thing is, kind of the point. For almost as long as there has been an Islamic Republic of Iran,
Yeah.
they have been weeks away at most from a nuclear weapon. They that I
Yes.
do not remember a time when Iran was not 10 days away from a nuclear weapon.
Right.
This is I am 30 years old,
Yeah.
and I do not remember a time when Iran
Mhm.
wasn't just about to have nukes. It's
And
because if they wanted to make a nuclear bomb, they have the uranium, they have the facilities, they refine the uranium. They are a handful of days away from a nuclear bomb, less if they just manufacture the parts that turn it into a bomb. They don't want to do it,
Yeah.
like,
or at
I
least
can I
they
just
didn't before you killed the leader and let his son, who may or may not actually be dead, become the new leader, who is famously more pro nuke.
Yeah.
Yep. Can I also just mention something? It's the fact that it's always been the freaking Republicans who've been like, Iran has nuclear weapons, because I've never really heard Democrats talking about it.
Oh,
It's been kind of a bipartisan
you
concern.
hear it from them. Like that was kind of the premise behind the Obama Iran nuclear deal. The one that we made and we signed and we ratified, and then Trump immediately gutted it as soon as he got in office in 26 or 2017.
I
Because
still don't. I
he
still
didn't
haven't.
like that Obama did it. That was the whole
Yeah.
that's the only
Yeah.
reason.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
still not sure how he. This is an aspect of American law that needs some work done on it. Because theoretically, when a treaty is passed by the Senate, it's the law of the land. So if the treaty got ratified, Trump shouldn't be able to just immediately undo it. But of course, that's giving a lot of credit to American jurisprudence that it's never deserved.
I don't think it was legally a treaty is the thing.
Oh, okay.
Um
Okay.
like most of American foreign policy in the 21st century, we found a way to do a thing that is in the Constitution through executive power alone.
Yeah.
And now that's the only way things happen. Um,
God, we need to fix that.
yeah.
We do.
Here, here's the thing. I simultaneously am like, we need to rein in the executive branch and give power back to the legislature. And also, we need a way to impeach the legislature and regulate Congress that doesn't have to go through Congress. Because shockingly, Congress never votes to take power away from itself.
Yeah.
They'll, sit on their thumbs and do nothing while it's de facto taken away from them. But they never take power away from themselves on paper,
Right.
like the British monarchy.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
It's like having a form of government made in the late 1700s is no longer working for us.
Shocking, I know. Um, yeah, we what I'm saying is we need an American legislative Magna Carta. Um,
Gather your weapons, rise up against the government, take them all down, communist revolution.
but like this is just the most recent bullet point, the Iranian nuclear question. Because anytime you can describe something as the blank question, everything ends well. Um,
Yeah.
the It's just the latest and probably the biggest bullet point on what I think is the geopolitical lesson of the early 21st century, which is every country that wants to retain its sovereignty needs a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't see another lesson you can take away from especially the last 10 years.
Yeah, you need a nuke or else you can get invaded. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's a gross and terrifying lesson, but I mean, either have a nuclear weapon or be friends with the US, I guess.
Yeah, or have a friend who's willing to park their nuclear weapons in your country.
Yeah,
Um the you know or both if you're a couple of the countries we've talked about today.
yeah,
Um but like Ukraine signed away their nuclear weapons after the fall of the USSR. Russia and the US both guaranteed their sovereignty for it. Russia
yeah,
invaded.
and Trump is Putin's lapdog.
yeah,
You know, Saddam contemplated a nuclear program in the 80s. The US invaded. Libya contemplated a nuclear weapons program, scrapped it after negotiations with the US. We helped overthrow Gaddafi. Iran has been flirting with the concept of a nuclear program for decades and has gotten nothing but bombs and assassinations out of it. Meanwhile, Israel gets to do whatever the fuck they want without even publicly admitting they have nukes. America, has the benefit of being an imperial power on top of the nukes, but and nobody does shit about it because you can't.
yeah,
Especially now with the madman in power. Like,
Well, yeah, and then there's the Trump tweets from last week where with the a once great civilization will be destroyed, where it was not likely that he would use nuclear weapons, but nobody was totally willing to rule it out. And
yeah,
that's almost scarier.
yeah.
see,
And I
I just
mean,
read that tweet as an Oracle of Delphi kind of
I, you know,
foretelling.
I
yeah.
as the history of Persia guy, I was really pleased to see everybody suddenly know who the hell Croesus is.
Your podcast is doing great work, Trevor.
Yeah. I mean, part of the reason everyone's supposed to be so concerned about Iran getting nuclear weapons is that, well, you can't trust them because terrorism. But like, who said you could trust the US at this point?
Oh,
You know?
I mean, I
the
don't.
look, this especially in the context of this podcast, this is a much deeper topic that I will explore in more detail at other times. But who is the United States to call anybody else the biggest uh supporter of terrorism in the world?
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
it is only terrorism because we disagree with it. It is terrorism. I want to be really clear about that. The things that Iran backs in Yemen and with especially the last couple years of Hamas and Hezbollah and
Mhm.
smaller organizations around the region, they are terrorists. Those are the tactics they use. However, the United States had the School of the Americas to train Latin American death squads.
Yeah.
W- what else do you call that?
Yeah.
I know you may get this on your own podcast, in this podcast in particular, but didn't America also train Osama bin Laden?
I, Osama bin Laden, in particular, kind of overblown. He wasn't. He was kind of just a rich guy involved in the 80s when that stuff was happening. The elements of the Afghan Mujahideen that eventually became the Taliban and some of the earliest Al Qaeda recruits, and also the Northern Alliance. that helped overthrow the Taliban in 2001. All of those guys, especially their leadership and like high-ranking members by the time we get to 2001, all of them trained by the US during the Soviet-Afghan War.
So
Like,
America just causes its own terrorists. That's what I'm hearing.
oh,
Well, yes.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Also, like all of our worst enemies in the world. Like, again, we talked about this with Iran earlier. The United States orchestrated a coup against the popularly elected prime minister to reassert royal power under Mohammad Reza Shah in the 1950s, which led to a period of both good, as in like good for people reforms, and secret police crackdowns. And those were reforms that their government could not afford at the time, which is
Right.
why they were not as successful as a lot of Iranian expats would like you to believe. Lots of, especially monarchist Iranian diaspora people, will point to the good things that the Shah wanted to do and gloss over the fact that the Shah did not have enough money to do the level of infrastructure and education that he asked for.
Yeah.
And that sucks and is one of the things that Mohammad Mossadegh was trying to fix by nationalizing their oil reserves.
Right.
And in the end, it took an extra 26 years, but they ended up nationalized anyway under a regime that was hostile to the US and the UK. Aside from the oil
Colonializers
issue,
causing their own issues. I see.
Aside from the oil issue, the popularly elected government of Iran in the 1950s didn't have much of a problem with the Western powers. They didn't have that much of an issue with the United Kingdom, who had occupied them for most of the preceding decade.
Yeah.
But instead, the British were going to have to pay for oil, so the United States did a coup. That created immense popular discontent against the Western powers in Iran that provided the initial base of support for the Islamic Revolution, and that's how we got here. And it's not like that is a unique thing in American history.
You know, I didn't like Churchill going into this. I mean, I didn't need more reasons to hate Churchill. I absolutely hate Churchill. Like, no matter what he did in World War II, I still hate him. Like, but oh man,
Yeah. If anybody is confused by that, Google the Bengal famine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just yeah. I you know, even outside of Iran, but related to Iran, Saddam Hussein invades Iran in the 1980s. Who do you think's funding the Iraqi army at that time?
Yeah.
It's us,
Yeah.
like, and then we ended up fighting all of that military equipment we gave to Saddam a decade later.
Ah, so those were the weapons of mass destruction. We gave them to him.
Yeah, if Saddam Hussein had any weapons of mass destruction, it's because we gave them to him during the Iran-Iraq War.
Yeah. So once again, the U.S. is causing its own problems and then using it as a premise to, hey, another regime change. This time it'll work.
And this is all without any discussion of Latin America, which could be a whole separate episode. Several dozen separate episodes, if I'm being honest.
And I have so many thoughts on those. As your resident Latin podcasting friend.
Don't worry, you can come on for you'll have to decide whether you want the missile crisis or the Bay of Pigs.
But the missile crisis has Russia, which is more my niche. But
how about this? I'll do Bay of Pigs because it's all expired World War II military equipment. And that's one of my obsessions.
What is it? The Predator meme of the black and white hands
right
shaking, and on one hand it's the Bay of Pigs invasion, on the other hand it's Star Wars.
Wait.
grasping World War II surplus in their
Yeah.
hand. Just just a souped up MP40 in the middle.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was messing up Bay of Pigs with something else.
You were
What the
thinking of
fuck?
the you were thinking of the Spanish-American War.
Yeah.
You know, I was willing to believe that there was a one of Teddy's descendants involved because uh fun fact for everybody, I'll do a more about this when I do the whole episode about it. When the United States orchestrated a coup against Mohammad Mossadegh in 1953, that coup was led on the ground by Kermit Roosevelt.
Oh
Woo,
my, oh yeah, that's
Kermit.
right. I knew about that. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Ah, that doesn't stop being, that's just such a random fucking thing.
Hmm.
Yeah, uh-huh. Just he was just
I,
a CIA agent.
it,
Ah, the Roosevelts.
it's probably the name, but it's in my mind every time he shows, I'm reading about the history of Iran and he shows up, it's like having a Sesame Street character just walk through my
Yeah,
mental picture.
it's like if you were talking about the Battle of the Bulge and it was like Big Bird McClellan. Like,
Yeah.
but on the other hand, I can see that as like a World War II colonel's nickname.
Yeah.
Um,
Big Bird Big Bird McClellan, yeah, Civil War general and Big Bird, just like walking through the Ardennes forest with a little hat perched on his big yellow head.
Okay, but to be fair, imagining Kermit the Frog just leading an army just makes it so much better to watch. Because there's nothing
Okay,
I've never seen something about that the Muppets have been in that I didn't enjoy.
Muppets
you
take Tehran.
know, what was Frank Oz doing in 1953?
Oh boy.
I mean, he was probably still working with Jim Henson on the like really really early Muppet stuff,
Yeah.
if that stuff was even happening yet. Like V1 Kermit black and white public television stuff. Or no, public
uh,
access.
yeah,
Wait,
his first television credit is Sesame Street in 1969.
okay, so question. Are Sesame Street and the Muppets in the same universe?
Um, as much as there is a Muppet universe, yes, because they share a couple characters, but Henson and the what is it, the Sesame Street Workshop both kind of wanted to keep them separate because
Okay.
the Sesame Street Workshop, and I'm sure I'm saying the name wrong, but they very much wanted to focus on kids and from a very educational standpoint, obviously. And Henson had always wanted the Muppets to be like entertainment for adults. And so it was like very much a mutual thing that they both agreed very, very early on that they wanted them to be separate things. But then, Kermit is just so charismatic.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense to me. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It's just I didn't really grow up with them, so I'm like, hmm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because the Sesame Street I saw was in Spanish, and Big Bird was not yellow. He was
There's a
green and
Well,
great
red.
there's a great book called The Street Gang about the creation of Sesame Street, which is worth everyone's time. It's a really great read. If you want to read about the well-intentioned people and government doing things that don't suck.
Hmm.
Occasionally, as humans, we get things right. So that's a good one to check out.
well, it turns out we are so off topic now, but it turns out in 1953, Frank Oz was 9 years old, um,
Okay.
and Jim Henson was a year away from getting his first puppeteering job.
Right, right, right. Yeah, yeah. He was older,
What,
but
not that much
not
older. He was
not
only
not that much older.
16.
Yeah, yeah. He was a guy who was into the puppets from from the beginning, but Definitely had his own vision. Although at that point, puppets on television were just a way to force kids to watch cartoons. Not like now where it's cartoons.
Yeah.
Badly made 3D puppet cartoons.
So,
God,
with
they're
us
so
being so off
bad.
topic, do we want to wrap this up?
Yeah, I think that is probably a good point. I think we've said all that there is to say about our thoughts on the current situation. It's just really fucked up.
I mean,
Um,
Yeah.
I have 6 words to say.
all right, I'm
Fuck America,
counting.
fuck Iran, fuck Israel.
Yeah, okay. 6 words.
Yeah,
6 words to live by.
that sums it up.
Yeah.
At the moment, yeah. I guess never trust a government.
No, I don't trust any government. There's one government I trust so right now because it's making me happy, actually,
Okay.
and it's the mayor's government of New York City.
I don't you know, we'll come to hate him too.
I don't want to right now, okay?
Yeah, we can have the happy times. Let's enjoy it now. But
Anarchy.
I just drew the anarchy A symbol in celebration of our declaration against governments.
I mean, as a person, I generally think I'm not an anarchist personally because I think we probably need governments. We just should never trust them. So, but it's very not punk rock of me to say.
Yeah. uh,
I'm a punk rocker, yes I am.
I gotta find it again. It's somewhere hidden deep in my Twitter, but which would mean I have to log back into Twitter.
Don't do
Um,
it.
Don't do
but
it.
every now and then I do it to see what Aurora's doing.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Literally the only reason that I log into Twitter anymore.
I only get
But
notifications for Aurora, and I'm like, okay, I
Yeah.
know what Aurora's doing today.
but the I have a great anarchist Zoroastrian Farabahar symbol hidden in there somewhere.
I love that. I
Nice.
need it.
Nice.
um, but yes, all
Speaking
right. Go ahead.
Speaking of such things, the next episode that I'm going to be doing on Why Though, my podcast about my record collection, is about the Titus Andronicus epic album, um, The Most Lamentable Tragedy, which you'll be able to hear that in a couple weeks wherever you hear free podcasts.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, uh, remind everybody about your other podcast, and then Roberto, it can be your turn.
So, I have 2 podcasts. One of them is Why Though, a personal journey through my record collection, where I review albums that I happen to own for various comic reasons. This one I bought. But my main show is Wittenberg to Westphalia, The Wars of the Reformation, a show which attempts to talk about the Wars of the Protestant Reformation, except, as mentioned, I'm 12 years in and haven't finished the introduction. So if you like tangents and extensive levels of detail and me figuring out research things, check it out. It's better than it sounds.
Yeah,
It's
and
really
just to be
great.
clear, yeah, just to be clear to everyone, he's like 126 episodes or something in, so it's not like there's not content. It's just that the introduction is very long.
It's a very long introduction. The podcast is going to start at it's set to start at 1500 or so, and I'm currently around the year 1066.
Nothing bad happened in 1066.
Sorry, 1075. I'm not giving
Oh,
myself enough credit.
there we go.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh no, Ben's catching up to me time-wise. I should hurry up.
1066, the lamentable year of the Norman invasion of Sicily.
Oddly, the Normans have an awful lot to do with what I'm currently talking about.
They were real busy in the tens.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they got around.
Roberto, plug your podcast and your other podcast and your other podcast.
Okay. So for Czar Power, we're currently looking at the Battle of Kayala as of recording this episode. So, kind of seeing where the Cumans slash Bull of Sea slash Pechenegs are, overrunning the Rus because of some idiot named Igor. And all the Igors are idiots. So we're currently doing that, but we're in a timeline. We're getting very close to the Mongols. So I'm doing everything in my power to not get to the Mongols immediately. Because that means having to switch books, and I don't want to do that. But yeah, we're currently on hiatus on that one just because I've been dealing with a series of illnesses and injuries since the new year. So it's been great.
Good
Um,
times.
Then the history of Sacramento, Georgia. We're currently finishing up the Lazai War. I think we just covered the last episode, the last battle of the Lazai War, in the last episode that did release, and which is we're closing up shop on that, and then finally going into the princedoms and the rise of Islam, which will be so much fun to cover. Um, which will be out of Trevor's podcast purview, and history of Persia. And with Quest for Power, I am in the audience for that one as my co-host Michael reacts or writes about I guess, the mythic history of Ireland as of right now. So
Right.
yeah, those three shows, check them out. I edit them all, and I'll eventually get to releasing episodes once my arm is fully functional.
All right. And if for some reason you want to continue hearing more of my voice without the presence of people to have a conversation with, I am also the host of History of Persia, where I cover the history of the ancient Iranian empires from about 700 BC to 700 CE. I am currently in the mid 200s BC and full steam ahead on the reign of Antiochus III the Great. And as you can imagine, that makes today's topic near and dear to my heart and my brain and deeply distressing. I can't wait to find out in 3 or 4 years what museums were blown up in the last couple of weeks.
Oh God.
Oh, don't tell me that.
It happens every time there's a war. It's just part of what happens. When Saddam did it, he blew up Susa. Um,
Uh,
yeah. Fun fact: there used to be columns standing in Susa. There aren't anymore. Turns out, artillery shells do a number on 5,000-year-old buildings. Um, but that is my plug. You can find more information about this podcast, that podcast, and links to other things at hopfulmedia.com, hopfulmedia.com. You can support me at that same URL. And until next time, remember the three fucks.
Hey, History of Persia fans. Before Persia, another civilization controlled the Middle East, the very first civilization, the inventors of writing itself. From the clay tablets of ancient Mesopotamia come the oldest stories. The history and myth of the first Mesopotamians is the subject of the Oldest Stories podcast online at oldeststories.net. If you like ancient history, come check out the oldest stories after you listen to this episode.
The history of Persia is intertwined with conquest. It began with conquest when Cyrus, king of a small city called Anshan, set out to build the greatest empire the world had ever seen. In a series of stunning campaigns, he achieved just that, becoming one of the greatest conquerors in history, and basically started Persian history. After all, you don't get the title the Great for nothing. But he wouldn't be the last great Persian conqueror. Other Persian rulers like Darius the Great, Mithridates I, and Ardashir I would go on to become great conquerors on their own, establishing their own great empires and legacies. If you want to hear their story, and the stories of other great conquerors, many of whom are far less famous despite their great achievements, join me, Ramzi Shalah, on my podcast, The Conquerors Podcast, available on all platforms you listen through.